People who didn't take sex ed, what was something you had to learn the hard way? NSW. When I first started developing, there was two things I didn't understand. First was pubic hair. I was convinced I was a Neanderthal that somehow slipped generations, and I was the only person to have this monstrosity. Second was when my breasts grew and I got some tiny purple stretch marks. Convinced veins in my breast were rupturing. Looking back, I wasn't too swift. Then a boy did this motion at me in English class. He made a V with his fingers and stuck his tongue in the middle. I thought it was just some goofy gesture, and I went about my day doing it towards everyone. I didn't learn until a senior in high school that a girl's period lasted longer than one day. I always assumed it was just one day a month, until I made a comment and was told how wrong I was. I'm sure most girls wish that was the case. Kind of the opposite, but my family moved when I was 5, and my mom put me in charge of sorting all the unmarked VHS tapes into boxes. Most of them were either cartoons my aunt had recorded for us. We didn't have cable or anything, or home movies, but one I found broke my young mind. It was a scientific documentary about S3x. It explained everything for the shift in hormones when arousal happens, the phases of seduction in different cultures, and broke down coitus to the nth degree. There were close-ups of nipples getting hard, diagrammed anatomical studies, and film taken from inside a uterus during intercourse all the way to the grand finale money shot. It then went on to explain all about conception and pregnancy. I watched it from start to finish, and never told a soul. I still have no idea why my parents hid it. Years later when my dad sat me down to have the talk I told him I already knew, and not to sweat it. I have never seen him so relieved. The dong is a fickle and unreliable instrument, with absolutely no sense of decorum or timing. Take it easy, Oscar Wilde. Didn't know about jacking off, so when I was getting off without actually knowing that was what I was doing I came and panicked because I didn't know what it was and cried a bit. Almost anything to do with what a period entailed. I knew the dry details, but finding your dong covered in blood is more than a bit disturbing when you didn't know that was a thing that could happen. Blowjobs don't require actual blowing. As a matter of fact, one of the quickest ways to get a guy to never, ever speak to you again is to grab his dong and blow on it like you're inflating a Walmart brand air mattress. Never knew you had to stick it in. Always thought you just rubbed the parts together like spreading peanut butter onto some bread. Boy oh boy was I wrong. Well, I did take S3x ed, but this is something I learned the hard way. Do not use a warm sensations lube if you're a girl losing her virginity. It's like fricking lemon juice in a paper cut. Related, do not use warm sensations lube on your butthole in preparation for anal. It does not do as described when applied there, and feels more like 100 tiny bee stings. My S3x ed was a forced purity ring ceremony. We promised to wait until marriage. For what? We weren't sure. They didn't let us graduate to the next grade if we didn't participate. This also wasn't some in-class thing. This was a $$$ spent on a prom-style dress and diamond ring and parents had to present you type of thing. Also I was 11. Okay, so I got my period for the first time when I was 12. I knew periods were a thing that happened but I didn't know what it was exactly. So when I started mine I obviously freaked the frick out because I was fricking bleeding like I was dying or something. Then when I told my mom the only explanation she gave me was you can get pregnant now. So after that I had pregnancy scares for 3 years until I found out how pregnancy happens. I found out from a pregnant girl in my class freshman year, and that's how I learned about intercourse. She was very detailed in the worst way. I lived in a small town in Texas so there is no S3x ed at all. There are a lot of pregnant teenagers though. I was homeschooled so, while I had the talk I didn't have S3x ed. I thought for whatever reason if a guy got hard there was no other way to get him unhard unless he climaxed. Which a very understanding guy I dated explained to me that it could, when I wasn't ready for intercourse, but felt bad I got him so hard. Also for some reason I thought after a guy climaxed it would deflate like a balloon really fast. That is in fact, not the case. I've taken sex ed since, twice, actually, but I hadn't at the time this happened. I was in 5th grade, they hadn't given us sex ed, and we were at that age where we were noticing changes in our bodies. You can probably tell where this story is going to go from the next sentence. It all happened on pajama day. I was beginning to notice girls, and there were 2 or 3 girls in my class that I liked. The teacher told us to get up and get some papers. But hold the phone. My weenie is standing up on end, sticking out, literally, like a sore thumb. My assumption was that I just had a really big dong and I got up in all my glory. All I can recall is one of my crushes saying, "Well, that's disturbing." I had no idea what was going on. The hole is a lot lower than I expected it to be. I've been sexually active for years and it's always lower than I expect it to be. I didn't know about the in-out part until I found video P. I thought you just put it in and left it there. I put my tampon with the plastic that encapsulates the cotton part still on. I didn't know how I was supposed to put it in and that you had to pull out the other plastic. Then YouTube saved me. Grew up in Catholic household, my mom still doesn't approve of me wearing tampons. But like heck I am going commando. With only a pad, I am a blood ocean for at least 2 days. My dad always told me that if a girl says that she's on the pill and you don't need a condom, you definitely need a condom. My naive teenage response was something along the lines of how much I loved and trusted my girlfriend and how she would never, ever, lie to me. He looked me square in the eye, fixed his jaw, and quietly asked me, "How do you think I ended up with 3 kids?" I went to a Christian school that thoroughly taught us different methods of contraception. Bonus. Gave us an immature how-to of intercourse, and then sent us on our merry way. No talk from parents. When I got my first period, I thought I had back pain. It wasn't until I saw the blood the next day did I clue in. The first year that I was supposed to take S3x said I had my dad sign my opt-out form. When he asked why I didn't want to go, I said it's S3x ed being held overnight at a Catholic church. I can't imagine I'll miss anything important. He signed the form and according to most of my classmates I missed 12 of the worst hours of their lives. My parents are both doctors. Before any sort of school run education, they sat me down and gave me an objective, clinical description of pretty much everything a kid could think to ask, complete with anatomical diagrams. A few years later, my elementary school taught their class, and I remember thinking how inadequate and silly it was compared to what my parents had explained. Must suck to have parents who for whatever reason aren't able to explain the stuff to their kids, because school clearly has no business doing it. Where exactly a vag is, spent an embarrassing amount of time feeling around for it. I thought it was in the same spot my dong was. I grew up in a very religious home. Also went to a Christian private school. No S3x ed offered. When I started my period, I had no idea where a tampon was inserted. I had never explored down there on my own. So it wasn't until I had a boyfriend and he went for some below the belt action that I even realized I had a hole down there. I had been trying to put a tampon in my urethra. S3x ed is important. Well, for ladies at least. If you don't pee after fricking, you're more prone to get a UT. Woman here, with no brothers of any kind. Raised with guilt of anything intimate. I had no idea that a dong gets hard, and it can stand up. Either it just got big and hang down like a sloth clinging onto a tree. Well, that was an awkward surprise for me. A 20-something guy I used to work with thought all women got their periods at the exact same time every month. Also, before you say it, I know cycles can sync up, but this dude legitimately thought that at the exact same moment every vag on earth starts bleeding, like they saw a full moon or some crap. We had S3x ed, but I learned later in life how terrible it was for several reasons. 1. I thought girls peed out of their butts until like 6th grade. 2. I thought I had AIDS right after learning about it because I had kissed a girl. 3. I didn't know what was happening the first time I ejaculated. 4. I still don't exactly know what menopause is. I got S3x ed, but they never really mentioned lube at all, so I didn't know what it was. My boyfriend went to the same school, and I decided to try anal. Dry, with no prep or anything. Still a bit scarred. I, 13, had to tell my friend, 16, that girls do not, in fact, have balls. He argued with me over it for days. He wanted you to drop your pants and prove it. I had a small amount of sex ed in school, but somehow I had mixed up the meanings of the words erection and ejaculation. So after my teacher was talking about how erections can happen randomly at any time during puberty, even just standing in line for the drinking fountain, I spent a good 2-3 years terrified that I'd just spontaneously bust a nut in my pants without warning. Had sex ed, but in my school's sex ed obviously gay people didn't exist. Fast forward 2 or 3 years, and the first time I was introduced to anal intercourse as a concept was when one of my classmates called me a fudge packer and had to explain to her confused me what it meant. So I went to a repressive Christian school from K-12. Our sex ed was so goddamn lacking that it's actually funny. One year, they separated the boys and girls. Boys into the gym. The gym teacher, a burly, squat man named Gary, went in front of the boys and said, verbatim, "Gentlemen, you've got a zipper, keep it up, and don't forget to change your chonies. Now let's play some basketball." And we did. And that was the entirety of sex ed that year. Eventually, they contracted sex ed out to an abstinence-only company, and it took until I was, like, 20 to learn that we were lied to quite brazenly. AIDS virus cannot get through condom pores like a ping pong ball through a hula hoop. Abortions don't make a woman completely infertile after having one. Having sex with other people does not make a woman less and less desirable the more partners they've had, like a strip of tape getting less and less sticky the more people it's been stuck to. Also, when I had sex the first time, the pubic bone kinda threw me off when I went down on her. It was a bit hard to get around. You can't feel much with a condom on. Also, stay away from the fire and ice crap. I went to a Christian school for my elementary education, and surprisingly I did receive basic sex education. The thing that surprises me is how unbiased the whole thing was. The teachers segregated the genders, and all the kids were brought into the gymnasium, and a short film was played. The video explained that boys and girls had different equipment, and that a sperm meets an ovary during conception, etc. Then, they handed us all a little bag with deodorant and a razor in it. Although I do not live in the South, I am surprised that I was given such an impartial representation of intercourse from a Christian school, especially at such a young age. I was around 10 or 11 at the time. When I was 9 I had a microscope kit. I peed on a slide so I could see sperm. My dad had to explain to me what semen was. I proceeded to ask him for some of his so I could look at sperm through my microscope. I still cringe when I think of asking him for this. Note, he did not give me any. The sex ed I received doesn't really count. It was at a conservative Christian school and they didn't teach us anything that was useful. Basically sex is bad. Only if you're married. Only for procreation. I figured it all out on my own via internet, TV, and experimenting. This is the goodest flyboy. He will bring you 10 years of happiness in exchange for a like on this video. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.